people will try to take advantage of you. Um, it's not all evil people. Um, some of the people who are trying to get as much as they can from you could be children. They need to know where the line is, after all. And so you have to recognize this is a part of life, is that people will try to take advantage of you. Not everyone, but many people will try. And so when you're showing kindness, you're showing a generosity, a willingness to give, a willingness to bend, a willingness to show importance to and prioritization of others so people will see that. And well, if an ATM is printing money, then people will show up to get some of it. So how can you prevent people from taking advantage of you? This is an important question because in order for us to thrive in life, we need to be able to protect ourselves and our resources and not be taken advantage of on a regular basis. So to understand how to do this properly, we need to get out of the extremes, the fight, flight, freeze, fawn. When someone is attempting to take advantage, um, avoiding all people and running away, or just fawning and giving in all the time, or becoming violent with our words and actions, these are not the proper ways to handle everyday situations. Because it's not an emergency situation usually in day-to-day life when someone's just trying you. So the way to prevent people from taking advantage of you is to set boundaries. So what is a boundary exactly? A boundary is a rule or limitation that you create. Your job is to create the boundary. Do you have to express the boundary? Well, if you don't express the boundary, then you have not given the other party an opportunity to respect the boundary. So you have to get out of thinking that there are universal boundaries. Like, well, they should just know that I wouldn't like that. They should know that would be upsetting to me. They should know that's rude. Please recognize you live in a universe with unique individuals. You are a unique individual. So it is your responsibility to let people know where you are, what you are, who you are, what you like and what you dislike. The word boundary, another word for that would be like a border line, a boundary line. In a country, a boundary line is what indicates when you've stepped onto our territory or our soil, and it's to be protected. You see, so you must protect your boundary line because it is the outline of the self, and it lets people know where you are. You see, in the metaphysical and the energy realm, how do I know what you like, what you dislike, where you are, if you don't express it? So it is your responsibility to communicate to people if you want them to have the opportunity to respect the boundary. If you don't want them to have the opportunity to respect your boundaries, then no, in that case, you don't have to communicate what your boundary is, and you can skip directly to enforcement. But asserting the boundary is speaking up, using your voice to say, hey, no, I'm not okay with that, or in some way indicating that you're not, that a line has been crossed, essentially. So how do you know when to express a boundary? Well, you know when to express a boundary based on the feelings. Yes, that's what emotions are for. Your emotions are an indication from your subconscious to the conscious self. It is a communication from one part of you to the other. Your subconscious mind is like a computer, and it keeps track of your values. When the subconscious perceives a violation of your values, it gives you what we would call a bad emotion or a negative emotion, an unpleasant sensation in your body, because chemicals are being dropped into your bloodstream, and you'll feel it in your heart, in your body, in your whole being, a physiological change. You may even get hot, right? Flustered, shaky, depending on the emotion you're getting. So an unpleasant emotion is a communication from the subconscious mind that it perceives a violation of your values. The values are the self. in the metaphysical, the values are the self. That's what you are or who you are. You are your values, what is important to you, what you deem as valuable, what you believe in. So when you witness or perceive a violation of that, your subconscious is going to automatically drop chemicals into your system. That is the indication that you need to know, I have to examine this and perhaps set a boundary here. So that's how you know when to set a boundary. The feelings. You're supposed to listen to the feelings. Does that mean we obey our feelings at all times? No. Sometimes our feelings are incorrect. It's very important to understand that. Your feelings are not always correct. Your intuition is not always guiding you in the right direction. It's based on the subconscious perception, which is not automatically correct. It's like an AI. It's doing the best it can with the information it has, but it will not always be correct. So you need to analyze the information. You don't ignore feelings. You don't stuff feelings, but you also don't let them lead you like you are a slave to your emotions. You analyze feelings. When they come up, you listen to them. Just like if your child came to talk to you, if your spouse came to talk to you, if an employee came to speak to you, you would listen to them. But you do not just absolutely obey them. You take in the information, and then you as the leader make the decision. So you are the leader of the self. So it is your responsibility to make the decisions on what you will do moving forward based on the information that you've gotten. So once you get information that there's been a violation of the self, that's how you know when to set a boundary. So you've created the boundary now. You know, okay, there's a problem here. Next is to assert the boundary, which is to speak up. Skills of assertiveness is something you need to develop over time. It is a life skill. The skills of assertiveness means that you'll know how to speak up in a way that mitigates the violation of the other person, right? Because I can just say, hey, idiot, get away from me. But you see, that's not skilled assertiveness because it could very well violate the other person and harm their ego or create more conflict than what's necessary. Whereas if I'm able to express myself with skill, I might say something like, hey, I appreciate you so much, and I'm glad we're here right now. If you can do a little bit more of this and a little bit less of that, I'll be even happier. I don't know how you feel about that, but that's kind of where I'm at, and I wanted to let you know. And then they say, oh, I'm so glad you told me. I'm so sorry that I violated it. And now what I just did was I set a boundary, but I did it in such a way that mitigated the pain, mitigated the violation potentially of the other person. So finally, once you've asserted the boundary, after you've set the boundary, you have to enforce the boundary. And this is where a lot of people falter. They're afraid to set boundaries, by the way, because they're afraid of their own feelings, how they're going to feel when they set this boundary, and they're afraid of other people's feelings. How is that person going to feel if I set this boundary? But again, the fear is an emotion, and an emotion is a communication of a potential violation of your values. Pay attention to it, but don't follow it. Don't follow the fear. Sometimes, despite the fear, we need to move forward, and that is courage. So now, once we recognize that we need to enforce a boundary, this, like a country, involves imposing sanctions. And so when someone is continuing to violate our boundary that we've already expressed, or even if we haven't expressed it at any time, we can impose sanctions, which means removing access to our resources. And that's you, your time, your energy, your space, your beauty, your body, your talents. Those are your resources. Your money, your assets, those are your resources. So when you remove access to your resources, you have now imposed sanctions on the other person, which enforces the boundary. It does two things. It keeps you safe, and it shows the other person, in case you're ever going to have an interaction with them again, that they stand to lose if they want to continue to cross your boundaries and disrespect you. When you express your boundaries, you keep yourself safe from being taken advantage of.